Oil prices continue to float around $60 per barrel on Tuesday, spurred by an earlier decision by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies to further speed up output hikes in June. Precisely, Brent crude futures, Nigeria's oil benchmark, recovered slightly to $62 per barrel, a day after it dropped to an intraday low of 58.50 a barrel, its lowest since February 2021. While U.S. West Texas Intermediate was $58.94 per barrel, 24 hours after it sold for $55.30. Analysts believe that the low poses a huge blow to Nigeria's 55 trillion naira 2025 budget, which was built around a $75 per barrel oil price benchmark, maintaining that the revenue gap is something to worry about. Nigeria has been recording about $15 per barrel deficit compared with the oil price peg for this year, with the country also not being able to meet its crude production benchmark of 2.06 million barrels per day. Joining us on this show to discuss this deficit is Samuel Ayininuola, a financial expert and economist. Good morning, Mr. Ayininuola, and thank you for joining
Dr.
us.
Abati. Yeah, good morning, Rofi.
Morning,
yes.
sir. Morning, sir.
Well, the opening narrative will seem to explain it.
Yes.
What's your take?
Yes, my take on this is that the 2025 budget is very ambitious, built on a projection of 2.6 million barrels per day production and on a benchmark rate of $75. Now, there is a glut in the market, and the prognosis is not very, very encouraging at all. The OPEC Plus has decided to increase their production by 411,000 barrels per day, and this will just only go up. So the supply side,
800,000.
it will go up to about 800,000. Even some analysts are talking about 1 million barrels per day.
Yes. What they did last month and what they did this month.
Yes.
It's about
800,000. Yes. So what that means is that if the demand doesn't go with it, and there are issues like, of course, we know of the tariffs, that the American President Donald Trump has put in place. We also know of the fear of recession, that is gripping the major economies of the world. So what that means is that demand is likely going to continue to be soft. And when supply goes very high with no corresponding increase in demand, the price is going to continue to fall down. And that is why all the major bankers in the world, they've downgraded their forecast for the price of oil. Morgan has put that the highest they feel it can be this year will be $62.5 per barrel. Goldman Sachs is talking about $60 per barrel. ING is talking about $62. The only bank, Barclays of the UK, is talking about $66. But most of these banks have also downgraded their forecasts in a couple of times in the last 1 month. So going forward, it's going to really be very difficult for us on a very ambitious budget that we put in place based on a daily production of 2.06 million barrels per day, benchmarked on $75 per barrel.
Are we meeting the targets?
No, we are not.
When you say it will be difficult, how difficult? What is likely to happen?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, as at April, our monthly production is about 1.4 million barrels per day, and we know the reasons for this. right? We know vandalization of the oil pipelines. You know about oil theft. Oil theft, we have still not been able to solve that problem, you know. And of course, low investments in the oil sector. So all this combined together makes it difficult for us to reach this target of 2.26. The Minister of State for Petroleum, in installing the new board of NNPCL, has given them a marching order to reach a production level of 2.5 million barrels per day by 2026. But let's look at 2025. That's where we are now. That's where we are in this budget, you know, which is based on, this budget is predicated, you say it's a budget of restoration, right? Of securing this nation and revitalizing the economy that we have.
Now, I want to draw parallels with Angola, who
Yes.
are in a very similar situation. Their budgetary assumptions had been $70 for the oil price, and their oil output has been relatively consistent at about 1.1 million barrels per day. However, just last week or the week prior to that, Angola has made a decision to do a stress test, especially on their budget, based on the fluctuations in the oil price. So the stress test will reveal whether they need to freeze certain elements of their budget or whether they will have to go to the IMF for a loan to supplement their budget. My question is, if we are to implement the strategy of a stress test in our scenario, what could that look like? And is it something we should be doing?
I guess so. It is something that we need to do because our economy is so much heavily based on crude oil. But if we need to do the stress test, we need to now go back to the people. And that's why this policy of Nigeria First is something that I think we should look at very well. We need to reduce our consumption of foreign exchange. We need to cut our quota according to our size. I believe we are living above our means. That's the way I see it. You know, we are living above our means. We need to now adjust to reality that, look, what we think we are going to achieve, we are not going to achieve it. It is not possible. I cannot see this. You know, that's why I gave the prognosis by the main banks, you know, in the world. There's nothing very, very optimistic at all from their projections. So what that means is that this year's budget, and then with the heavy burden of debt that we have to service, it means you can even see it from our foreign reserves. Our foreign reserve consistently has been going down from January to February to March and then to April.
No, but they say our net reserves went up at some point. We recorded a high number in our net reserves.
No. The foreign reserve, you know, in March was about 38 billion, right?
But our net reserves, they recorded a 23 billion number to our net reserves recently.
I'm talking of the figures as released by the central bank, and the central bank also has to continue to support the naira. You know, the budget was predicated on 1,500 naira,
but also
to the dollar.
But also in speaking, you know, the other side of central bank, because I just came back from the IMF spring meetings, and some of the things that they said at the IMF spring meetings was the fact that, in fact, they've been doing well as regards, you know, defending the currency, that the only time that they needed to defend was because of, you know, this tariff slump that happened recently where they had to inject more money, and that they've been able to maintain a healthy net reserve. And their numbers came out recently to show that they have gotten back to a point of profitability. I'm talking about the Central Bank of Nigeria, I mean, based on the numbers that they released recently and all of that. So that aside, what's your reaction to that, number one? Number two, how can we then now ramp up production? Because as we speak today, it is only crude oil that can really give us what we want in terms of foreign exchange.
That's true.
how can we ramp up production? If we talk about, productive industries, SMEs and things like that, it's going to take a while. How can we do that? Secondly, how do we cut wastages? Thirdly, what will be the effect of this tax bill that was just passed? And how much do you think that will add to the projection of revenue for us, when that finally kicks in?
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start from the tax bill. A lot of Nigerians don't pay tax at all. So the tax bill, as tough as it may be, is a way forward for us to raise revenue.
To widen the tax
To
base.
widen the tax net, yes. But then, just like everything, we talk of the Nigerian factor. How is the implementation going to be? We've gone through the political side of it, that the House of Reps, the Senate, they've looked at it, and they are passing aspects of that tax bill. That tax reform bill is really, really necessary. This budget, as it is, even before this slump, is a deficit budget, right? About 16.3 trillion deficit. And I've also talked about the debt burden, because if we need to maintain our rating in the international community, we cannot default on paying our debts.
But we just finished paying our legacy debt.
Yes, that's
IMF,
true.
That's what they say. We're still waiting for the ratification. And this year alone, we did so well that said for the first time, our net foreign reserve went up to 23 billion.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But you see, when you look at all the other obligations, that Nigeria as a country has to follow, has to meet, that is really where the problem is. And that's why I was advocating that we need to drastically reduce our consumption of foreign exchange. We need to increase our productivity as a people. And we need to now adjust our standard of life. I remember in those days, we used to talk of low profile. Why the highest type of clothes I didn't can put on was Ankara, or Adire. So that should be it. We don't let us spend what we don't have. I don't really see how we can ramp up our oil production. I talked about the minister giving NNPCL a matching order of 2.5 million barrels per day. How are they going to achieve that? How will they do it? When the issue of oil theft, announced
the 1.5 billion injection.
That's correct. That's a good news.
Yeah.
That's good news. But the issue of oil theft, is not sorted out.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Is it an issue that cannot be sorted out? Because you recall that President Tinubu gave the new board of NNPCL 3 targets, one of which is to increase production, increase revenue, reform the NNPCL. And you are saying that the most important part of it, which is to increase production because of oil theft, cannot be achieved.
Vandalization and reduction in investment in the oil sector. Although, what Rufai said about Shell saying they are going to bring in some investment, that's very encouraging. That's good. But we need more than that for us to have a good change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayininuola. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Ruben.
Thank you.
Jimbai and
you.
Rufai.
Thank you.